I would say six of my colleagues, canceled out effectively the votes of over 10,000 citizens. That's pretty broad. That's definite, in my mind, a definite overreach. Well, as matters relate to Ms. Brzezowski and her coming as a delegation to the board, I think what is really central to much of the discussion that takes place at board tables is that the fact that trustees are elected officials. And Ms. Brzezowski came and she started delegating to the board, and she was prevented from completing her delegation. And the primary reason that was given was that the chair at the time felt that Ms. Brzezowski was going down a road that would essentially, that Ms. Brzezowski was violating the Ontario Human Rights Code. Because Ms. Brzezowski was never allowed to complete her delegation, so I have no way as a decision maker of knowing whether or not she was going or violating the Ontario Human Rights Code. That's fundamentally wrong. Unfortunately, we never got to hear her entire presentation. She was reading some passages. She got to the point where she was reading some passages of books that she indicated was in our libraries. I raised a question as to whether or not this book that she was reading from was in our libraries. I thought then she had a right to read. Why can't we hear what it is that our elementary school students have access to? I made a challenge, and the majority of trustees voted to uphold the decision of the chair. And I don't think that decision was based on evidence or facts. It's just knee-jerk figuring as a board we can bully citizens and not hear them, like just cancel them. It's wrong. It was wrong then, and it's still wrong today. I've heard those concerns, and that was one of the things that strongly motivated me to come to her defense and said, yeah, we need to hear, and the board have an obligation to provide answers to legitimate questions that are being posed. One part of the complaint dealt with my retweet of articles written in one of our national newspapers, award-winning journalists. And the classification of the tweet by my colleague was that I had the audacity to be retweeting something from a journalist, and they're into a lot of name calling, so this journalist was called a right-wing columnist or journalist. So basically, anyone that my colleagues disagree with, there's a name that is attached, and it's always something inflammatory. Like, for example, I've been called a white supremacist by people that support my colleagues, and that people that my colleagues readily accept their endorsement. And I've been called a white supremacist on more than one occasion, simply for asking that all voices be heard, because I think this is important. My own colleagues that are running against me in an election got to weigh in and to say, well, I would be canceled. So basically it was like a foregone conclusion. I would say six of my colleagues canceled out effectively the votes of over 10,000 citizens. That's pretty broad. That's definite, in my mind, a definite overreach. One of the most important feedback that I received from quite a number of citizens was the results of the election on October the 24th, 2022, because I was resoundingly re-elected. For me, the Justice Center was a lifesaver because I found out very quickly how expensive access to justice is. And in the initial stages, I tried to the extent possible, based on my limited resources, to mount a defense to Code of Conduct charge that was brought against me by my colleagues shortly after the presentation by Ms. Brajowski. And it was, the costs were prohibitive. And without the help of the Justice Center, I'm not sure what my next steps would have been, because I think we well know that the judicial process can be expensive and justice is not cheap. And if you don't have the funds, it's a godsend to have organizations such as the Justice Center coming to my rescue.